Hi there. We're out of the Scorpio new moon and the sun is in Sagittarius, and what a relief. You can already probably feel the new spark of fire, of hope, of vision, of clarity that after this very deep Scorpio season is giving and infusing you with a new vitality, with a new kind of feeling like the cobwebs are slowly being removed from your eyes. At least this is how I've been feeling and many people I've been talking to the last couple of days. And of course, it was a very intense Scorpio season, which is a bit of an overused hyperbolic word for Scorpio, but it was a very profound Scorpio season, and it still remains a very profound Scorpio energy in the field for us for the next couple of weeks, and especially this week, because Venus and Mercury are still in Scorpio. And this is kind of what I want to talk about right now, is a bit the layout of this coming week. There are a few interesting things, but the most important one I want to focus on is that Mercury and Saturn finish their retrograde kind of together. Saturn goes direct by Friday, Mercury on Saturday. It's together. And this is also what I explored in the Mercury retrograde video, that this Mercury retrograde really feels like such a big embodiment of the mercurial archetype, in the sense that it connects and brings into different kinds of movement, different kinds of energies, even the planetary other deities or archetypal functions of our psyche, of our collective field. So by the weekend, Mercury in Scorpio will station direct on 20 degrees of Scorpio, and Saturn will do so on Friday. Saturday is Saturn's day, but Saturn will do so on Friday. But you will feel it for the entire weekend. And Saturn will do so on 25 degrees of Pisces. There are a few other interesting things, Venus being in Scorpio being the main one of them in many ways, because also by the weekend she will also oppose Uranus, which was so active for this new moon. Now, what I talked about with the new moon was also that so much of it is happening in the deep dark of our own unconscious with this new moon. A lot of the shedding and releasing and ending of deep emotional patterns and ingrained patterns that are keeping us from feeling fully engaged with the power of life and a life and the deep joy of being alive. Now, of course, shifting, the sun is in Sagittarius, and here we move more to what is the meaning behind it all? What's the greater vision? What's the greater plan? Okay, I'm releasing emotional baggage, but why? What for? What does it want to serve me? And what greater clarity can I gain once I've been released from unconscious patterns of the past that are no longer serving me? And in what way can this new clarity and this new life force actually help me move forwards to the things I really deeply give meaning to in life? And I find it's interesting, Viktor Frankl said, and I think Carl Jung said the same thing at some point in a letter, that what most people crave the most is not the joy of being alive, not the bliss of being alive or the vitality of it all, but a sense of meaning, that is the most important thing for human beings. And that is, of course, so much the this Scorpio to Sagittarius archetype and this transition between them, encountering all the deep, dark depths of the human psyche, of all the things that we can suffer, but then extracting medicine, extracting meaning, extracting like an arrow point out of it that can point us towards something greater, towards something higher, towards something beyond ourselves, beyond our current horizon. This Mercury retrograde began in the sign of Sagittarius, showing us already so much how this Mercury retrograde is intertwined with the deeper quest for meaning, but going back into Scorpio, where and how we first must still release deeper emotional patterns, which maybe at first glance don't necessarily have something to do with our greater quest or what we really want to dream of, or when how we want to move our life forward to, but that actually show that we really need to release something deep here and digest, in many ways, transmute and alchemize scorpionic parts of our being, of our psyche, of our emotional body, of our past, in order to be able to move forward. Now the same can be said of Saturn and Pisces. When Sagittarius is how we strive for truth and personal meaning and personal vision, and where we can also then fall prey to thinking our truth is the only truth, and in that way become the shadow expressions of the Sagittarian archer energy, the dogmatic, zealous, my way is the only way kind of vision of the truth. When truth, of course, pardon the pun, the opposite function, Gemini, shows us that there's as many people as there pass to the top of the mountain. There's as many experiences, as many perspectives as there are ways to truth. And the truth is just here now. It's in many ways self-explanatory, but every single one of us has to find their own access to it. And we lose it again, and then we need to remember and access it again. And every kind of person is also, in the words of Ram Dass, our teacher, our guru. Every single person can be that for us, a pointer to when, how we can reconnect with our own truth. In contrast, the other sign ruled by Jupiter, Pisces, speaks more of when, how we yearn for an ultimate transcendence, where it's not about capital truth anymore and our quest for that and the journey to that and the spiritual pilgrimage or whatever it might be, but our deepest ultimate yearning for transcendence, for being held by the arms of the cosmic, oceanic mother goddess, the universe, the mystery. And when, how we thus constantly need to experience cycles of projecting that outwardly and seeking that somewhere in external reality, and then again and again the disillusionment to realize that it's not that. Not the perfect partner, not the perfect house, not the perfect bank account or the perfect body and health, your most fulfilled, successful career, none of it is it. Because with Pisces, we really must come. Sagittarius would be fulfilled with many of these symbols, but the Pisces energy within us, and every single one of us has these archetypes. Even if we have no planets in Sagittarius or Pisces, we all have Jupiter, the ruler of these two, Neptune, the co-ruler of Pisces, somewhere in the chart. We have both of these in the areas of our chart, ruling certain houses, ruling certain areas of our own psyche and our own life and how we approach reality. And with Pisces, this disillusionment that must come from realizing that nothing in external reality is it, but that we must really have to anchor our own sense of the deepest kind of meaning and transcendence and yearning. We have to find that within ourselves, because it's not of this material reality, and we have to find that within ourselves, in our own connection to spirit or the transcendent beyond. Whatever name you want to give it, and no name suffices. There, the Tao that you can name is not the Tao, right? So Saturn stations direct in Pisces, talking about the very end of the Saturn cycle now. Saturn was last time closing its spiral dance around the Zodiac from Pisces to Aries in the middle of the 90s, 95, 96, if I'm not mistaken. And Saturn is all the structures of our reality, internal and external. Saturn is heavy. Saturn is weight. Saturn is the weight of responsibility of engaging with physical matter, engaging with physical time, space, engaging with really being here and taking accountability for our karma, for the consequences of our actions. Saturn's heaviness in Pisces can create immense heaviness in our emotional body, heaviness in the water, heaviness in the collective emotional field. Saturn likes to think it's very realistic, and in that way can be very discerning, and that's an amazing quality, but at the same time Saturn's view, especially viewed from Jupiter/Sagittarius angle, is quite pessimistic actually. It views reality much darker, more gloomy than it really is. So here we have now the stationing direct of Saturn and Pisces for the very last time. For the next 30 years, 27 years, Saturn won't be in the sign of Pisces again. It's the very end of the Zodiac. Saturn is not just the inner structure of our psyche and our mental, emotional bodies and how we engage with reality from this construct that we're creating there. and all the ways that we do and don't take accountability for that. But Saturn is also all the outer structures. So Saturn's very end now in Pisces is so much about a deep release of all kinds of structures that in the past we have maybe clung to, consciously or unconsciously, in order to gain a sense of stability, in order to get a sense of definition of who we are, who we're meant to be, what our role in society is. Saturn, in that way, is the scaffolding of our personality ego structure. Saturn's very end now in Pisces, and the last time it goes direct here, so much about when, how we have to release a lot of the scaffolding, a lot of the mask, a lot of the constructs, a lot of the identities that we thought we were but aren't, a lot of the external structures that we thought we needed in order to be stable and anchored in time-space, but actually must now realize that they are not that either, or that they're dissolving, that they're running away, that we can't control what we thought we could control. So much of this week is about this, the deep releasing of where and how we think we are in true personal control over our fate and destiny. This can bring up immense heaviness, immense grief, heavy waters. This can bring up, together with this Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, a lot of profound reflections of the past, of our choices, of all the crossroads we had, all the A and B and C and D decisions we could have taken, but we took this one, and then we took that one, and then we took that one. Now we're here. Now we're here. And the concept that really comes to mind for me with this energy, especially for this week, but also for the next 2.5, 3 months, as Saturn and Neptune are closing their time in Pisces, is this really deep practice of amor fati, of really falling in love, being in love, loving our own fate. Because Pisces can bring up a lot of anxiety also, of chances and opportunities missed, rivers and currents that we might not have even noticed were there, that could have led to something else in time, but it didn't, because we did not take that path. So we will also never be able to truly know and tell what kind of decision was maybe better, because we won't replay our entire life and be able to go on that day and that year like, actually, let's make the other decision. The grief and guilt Saturn can bring up is also a healthy thing. Guilt is not just, there can be introjected guilt that is not rooted in authenticity and truth within our own being, right? The guilt, the Christian sin is a good example for that. And that relates to a negative side of Saturn, the Saturn archetype. But the positive side of guilt is a deep recognition of where and how we have misstepped in a way that was not in true alignment with our inner integrity and who we really wanted to be. The only thing we can do there is owning up to it, and then also finding Pisces compassion and forgiveness for ourselves. Releasing these paths, releasing all the ways that maybe guilt or anxiety for what could have been from the past is holding us back from really meeting the moment now, afresh, new, with clear eyes. The fact that Mercury is also stationing now to go direct, or is ending its retrograde here in Scorpio, right? There's still so much of this really profound water energy. And yes, I really do feel like it's a relief that we're in Sagittarius season. The sun is at least in Sagittarius. But there is still this very deep undercurrent of emotional, watery processes that also, like I said, with this new moon, we won't get full clarity on all the deep work and all the deep releases that we're doing, the seeds that were planted with the Scorpio new moon to be in much more alive engagement with reality and a reclamation of our power and coming into the true recognition of our deepest soul desires and really acting from that place, stopping making excuses, and also stopping Pisces getting stuck in victim consciousness or poor little me, or blaming. Saturn is also so much blaming outer reality. We blame the state, we blame God, we blame our parents, we blame capitalism, we blame whatever ism, And all of these are ways in which we are externalizing the Saturn function and don't want to take full accountability for our own life. That does not mean not pointing out where and how the systems of the world and our social structures and governments or plutocracies are in deep misalignment, but it means accepting that they are, but still taking full responsibility for how we now choose to engage with that and not letting that dictate our own fate, our own identity. Because then we just stay stuck in this victim consciousness. Then we externalize our power and our authority and give it away. And this time we're done doing that, hopefully. Consensus reality isn't really, but I guess people that are watching and listening to me talking about some astrology perspectives of reality, hopefully we're all learning to step out of that, right? Every single one of us. The other thing with Saturn in Pisces, though, is of course where and how we dream up Pisces, our greatest visions and longing and desires, everything that we dream that could be, the realm of our imagination. And Saturn is where and how we can really anchor that and make that real. So I don't want to give you some platitude about like, oh, make your dreams reality. Sure, try, do the best you can. Do or don't do, there's no try, right? But still, there is also trying and failing. And then standing up again and trying anew. But apart from these platitudes that you also find a lot with pop astrology these days with Saturn and Pisces, what I find it really comes back to again and again and again is that inner stability that we're seeking with Saturn. In Pisces, everything is dissolving. It's all the river, it's all the flow, it's all the great cosmic ocean or cosmic fog or whatever. There's nothing to hold on to. The more you hold on, the more you feel like life or control is slipping through your fingers, and then that can create the Piscean overwhelming anxiety, chaos, right? Or the desire to escape and numb ourselves. Saturn and Pisces, at the very end of Saturn and Pisces, and I talked about this before, is where and how we must anchor Saturn deep within our own psyche, within our own emotional body, in a deep relationship to spirit, in a deep humbling, devoting ourselves to something greater, something beyond ourselves. To see that we're ultimately not in control, but acting from a place of faith that whatever greater force or intelligence is out there is actually benevolent and has our greatest good in mind. And moving from that faith then to trust and surrender, knowing that it is so, and knowing that when we act like that, we will be supported more than we can imagine, more than what we could hope for. Mercury retrograde right now is a great thing for that as well, because every Mercury retrograde breaks our mind open, forces us to become more adaptable, more going with the flow. You'll probably also have whatever kind of emails missing or communications going haywire or agreements not being reached or packages not being delivered or whatever, cars breaking down. All of these typical Mercury retrograde things. Also with Scorpio, where's trust in other people and where's mistrust or secrecy that is undermining that maybe. But Mercury retrograde ending this week is such a pivotal and supportive energy for this process, because it helps us to free our mental patterns, to see ourselves and reality differently from the status quo that our mind and nervous system is normally trapped inside. So Saturn's end in Pisces for me is so much about this deep anchoring in our inner connection to something that we can call spirit. And with this connection, establishing a constant stream of nourishment, of trust and faith, optimism. Not being dismayed and pulled down into the heavy darkness. I'm hearing so many things of really intense darkness the last couple of weeks. People unaliving themselves, people being lost in deep depressions or psychosis, because it is intense energy. And if we don't find this trust, this hope, this faith, then nothing of this world matters. then nothing in this reality has any point. Then we're all just in a funky red race to death, to who can be the richest billionaire. That's the old mythologies, that's the old stories that are also dying now with the end of Neptune, especially in Pisces, and beginning its new journey in Aries. Nothing in physical reality gives us that ultimate meaning as long as we don't find that within ourselves. But then we can find it everywhere, in the smallest chit-chat that we might overhear on the street. We can find spirit and this connection and this intelligence and this gracefulness that it brings everywhere. So yeah, some thoughts on Saturn's stationing direct. I hope you and me and all of us can find this faith and trust, because we'll need it for the new cycle. We'll need it for whatever's to come. Saturn won't be back in Pisces for the next 27 years. And we will get lost again in the outer reality and all the seeking and being disillusioned then. But this deep alignment and integrity with our faith, with our trust, with our ability, capacity to surrender to life, and amor fati, to love our faith, love our fate, love our life however it has unfolded up until now, with compassion, with grace, with forgiveness, with love. Getting out of comparing or whatever and realizing that our own journey is our own journey. Your own journey is yours. Nobody else has that. Nobody else has that specific journey. And that is exactly the journey that you're meant to be having right now, for better or worse. Because ultimately, it's all a teaching function. This is what Saturn ultimately is. It's mirroring the consequences of our actions, including our thoughts, including our emotional patterns, not necessarily actions in the real world, but including the inner stuff. It mirrors that back to us so that we can take full accountability. And on that deepest level, Saturn's energy is not just immensely wise and helping us to hopefully also get a little bit of wisdom in our lifetime, but immensely graceful and immensely compassionate. We might experience it as stern limitations, frustrations, why are being blocked, where's that self-doubt and that fear and that heaviness and that depression coming from. But on the deepest level, all of these patterns of Saturn are so that we grow beyond ourselves. And on that level, it is really deeply compassionate, because it initiates us into a higher version of reality, into a higher, deeper version of what it means to be alive, means to be human, means to find meaning. Yeah. So this got much deeper into Saturn than I anticipated. I guess it was just coming through. Didn't talk so much about this week, but yeah, you will feel a lot of these things now with Saturn, or also in the coming weeks as it goes direct again. And let me know your experience. Would love to know in the comments below. How are you feeling these energies? And as always, I'm available for one-on-one sessions where you can really explore and go much deeper together with me into your own birth chart and into your story and into how these archetypal patterns are reflected and enacted and are teaching you and are advising you and are your gifts and abilities in this lifetime. So if you want to do that, you can find the links also down below in the comments, and see you next time.